Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
Here, Cizikas on a breakaway. Casey skates in alone on Tukaras. Shoots. He scores! Casey Cizikas, a breakaway overtime game-winning goal. The Islanders win it 4-3. They even up the series at one game apiece. Steal home ice from the Bruins and are headed back to Long Island, all even.
Chris King on Islanders radio. You can tell he's excited. He represents the Islanders fan base after the Islanders go into Boston, nearly blow a 3-1 lead in the third period, but win the game in overtime behind that goal on the breakaway from Casey Cizikas. So the Islanders even up the series as the series heads back to Long Island. The Nassau Coliseum, the barn, will be rocking Thursday night. And for more on the New York Islanders and the NHL playoffs, we go out to our progressive guest line right now, and we bring on the co-editor-in-chief for Isles Blog. He is Rob Taub, and he joins us right now here on the Jake Asman Show. Rob, thanks for the time this morning, my friend. I hope all is well.
I'm doing great, Jake. How are you? It's the first time we're speaking, and I'm happy to be on.
Absolutely, man. I've been following your work for a while. Great to get you on the show here. So let's kind of start with last night's game in particular. When the Islanders were up 3-1, you could argue, Rob, they played as clean of a second period as we've seen this team have. They dominated, and then, of course, they build this 3-1 lead, and Boston gets right back in the game, tying it up at 3. What were you thinking from the Islander perspective as the Islanders were letting that 3-1 lead slip?
Yeah, I was thinking I wasn't surprised that it happened. You know, trying to stop that perfection line is extremely, extremely tough. We saw Washington have trouble with them in the first round, and the Islanders have always had trouble trying to contain them for since they've been together for the past 2 years. But I was thinking, you know what? It's a 3-3 game. Get to overtime. See where things go from there. And the thing that happened was they dominated after Boston tied the game. I think it was said on the telecast they were out shooting them 16-3 going into the overtime. As going into the overtime, and I thought the Islanders were the better team in overtime, and I was like, all right, one shot, that's all it's going to take. But I wasn't too worried because I've seen this kind of game from the Islanders before, right? They could blow a lead, but they still kept their composure. And that's the biggest thing. Keep your composure. That's everything that Barry Trotz preaches. And they kept their composure, and wouldn't you know it, they got the game. They got a bounce, game winner, and now we're back, coming back to the Island, tied 1-1.
Rob, staying with Barry Trotz, he made the decision before Game 2 to make a goalie change. He replaced Ilya Sorokin with Varlamov back in the net. Obviously, it paid off with the Islanders winning the game. How would you evaluate how Varlamov played in the net for the Islanders?
I think Varlamov played outstanding. I can say myself, I wouldn't have been surprised if he went back to Sorokin, but as he's always said for the longest time now, he's got two great goalies. But I think Varlamov was fantastic. The save he made on Taylor Hall right before Cizikas' goal, that will go down as maybe this thing that changed, maybe as the moment that changed the series overall. But he was tracking pucks last night. He was good. Could he have made a stop on the Marchand triangle? Maybe, but I thought overall he was solid, and I think he'll get the nod for Game 4. I really do.
Rob Taub.
Game 3.
Rob Taub with us here talking about the Islanders who tied up the series with the Boston Bruins in the second round last night. You wrote for Isles Blog. I was reading your column just before about Casey Cizikas, how he basically spent 10 years as the Islanders' hardest working player. He's beloved by everyone on that team. Barry Trotz talked about him representing the character and the type of player that he looks for when he's trying to help build a team. How much do you think it means for the Islanders that it was Cizikas having that moment last night, especially when you consider the guy's an unrestricted free agent coming up too?
I think it means everything. Look, Casey, I've watched him since I've watched him growing up as he's played here, and he gives you every single thing, every single night, 150%. And I think he's been through everything with this team that's gone from the bad to the good to now the great. And I think that he represents everything that it means to be an Islander. And I think that's why he's so beloved in that room, so so treasured by this organization. And yeah, we can go on the dynamic that he's an unrestricted free agent, but that's a conversation for another day. That goal for him was coming. It was really, I mean, as I said in my column, it was coming for a long time. He's been looking to score in the playoffs, but he's also, the way he plays night in and night out, it's just like he deserved that type of moment, and I'm glad he finally got it. And I mean that's all I can say is that moment was fully deserving of what he's done to represent this franchise and how much his teammates love him, how much the fans adore him, and what he brings to the table every single night.
Rob, the Islanders' top line with Matthew Barzal on it has not really gotten going just yet in these playoffs, and Barzal's taken some heat from the fan base as one of the best players on the team to really raise his game and start producing. I thought those guys, though, in that first line played really well last night, generated a lot of good chances. Did you see enough from what those guys did last night to feel confident that those guys are going to be able to start scoring some goals entering game 3 and 4 on the island?
I do. I thought Barzal was a force last night. I thought the entire line was really, really good. They seemed like the only line that showed up in the first 25, 30 minutes of the game. But no, I thought he was really good. He was using his feet. He was creating space. I think the Bruins really had no answer for him. I thought Eberle was he's starting to find himself too. He had a good game 1. He just couldn't find the back of the net. And I thought he was good last night as well. Leo Conrad, look, as much as people want to, tar and feather him for being on the first line, he does the little things that help out Barzal and Eberle, do what they have to do. I know if we get a goal, if you get a point from Conrad, it's an added bonus like it was in the first round. But I thought they were really, really sharp. And I think going into game 3, I think that really, really will help them out. Look, Barzal, he should have had a goal last night. He was firing on all cylinders. I don't know what he was thinking on that breakaway. I think he should have went to the forehand. But I thought he really, really came to play. I thought that whole line, I thought the entire team came to play last night. I thought they were the better team. Other than the 5 to 10 minute stretch in that third period, I thought that they were the better team all night. They weren't phased. They didn't they bent, but they didn't break. And that's what they need to take in going into game 3. And if they can get Barzy going game 3 in front of what's going to be an insane asylum type of crowd at the Coliseum, all bets are off with where this series could go.
Put it in perspective nationally when you talk about how insane the Nassau Coliseum's going to be. Obviously, the Islanders have been knocking on the door the last couple of years. This is the 3rd year in a row they're in the second round, but there's probably a lot of people that weren't around when the Nassau Coliseum was the place to be in the 80s when the Islanders won 4 straight Stanley Cups. Why is that building going to be rocking Thursday night when the Islanders return home with the series tied?
Well, I'll just admit, you say about the 80s. I was one of them. I wasn't born until 1994, what year that was. But no, I think the place is going to be – I tweeted it last night. If they're giving the Islander fans 2 days, not 20, not even just 24 hours. You're giving them 48 hours to get themselves all riled up, all crazy, tailgates, whatever. And the thing, and they kept mentioning on the broadcast, it's going to be a nearly packed barn. And that's what's going to be so big and so huge is that the Islanders they're going to have a fully a place that's going to go wild because they now have an arena full of fans. But I think from a national perspective, look, if you've never been inside the Coliseum for a playoff game, you're missing out. And even in the first round, game 3, I thought all 3 games were great, but when the Islanders need to turn it on, that's when the Coliseum is on. That's when the fans and the building, that's when it provides the edge, and that was the case in game 4 against Pittsburgh, and that was in game 6. In game 6, even though they trailed 3 times by 1 goal, they never stopped coming, and the crowd was into it. They were, from the get go. So I think on Thursday the place is going to be an insane asylum because now series is tied. And, and like I said, all bets are off when it comes to this team because we just don't know. And the fact that last year was in the bubble, 2 years ago, they got to play the Coliseum in the first round, but then had to move to Barclays. And I think that really, really hurt a lot of their momentum. I think now that they're coming back to the Coliseum and they know they're not going anywhere else, I think that's going to play a huge, huge factor.
Rob Taub with us here, co-editor-in-chief for Isles Blog. You can follow Rob on Twitter at @rtaub_. Final question about the Islanders, then we'll move to what was just a shocking upset in the playoffs between the Leafs and the Canadiens. I got to ask you about this line of J.G. Pajot, Kyle Palmieri, and Travis Zajac. You look at that line, and over the last 2 years, Lou Lamoriello basically put that line together by making moves at the deadline. I know there's a movement on Twitter, Rob, and you're an authority on Isles Twitter to call that line the deadline line, all right, or just the deadline, whatever you want to call it, however you want to spin it. What are your thoughts there? Can we go with that for the new name of that line?
Did you say the deadline? I'm sorry, I couldn't. Did you say that?
Yes, the Isles Road Warrior. He put it out there. He contacted me. He's like, you got to ask Rob about it. I'm like, all right, I will ask Rob about it. The deadline, because of course, all those guys are acquired at the trade deadline.
Oh, the deadline. Oh, the deadline. I got lost there for a second. I've actually never heard that until just now. But no, those guys, they've all been tremendous. And if that's the name of the line, I'll go with it. That's actually a great moniker for a line. But no, look, Lou Lamoriello, as much as people want to, throw him under the bus for some of these moves, he knows what he's doing. He knows how to build championship teams. J.G. Pajot has been a godsend since he got here. Kyle Palmieri, I said it even when he was strong. I said, wait for the playoffs, because that's when it matters the most. And he's played like it when it matters the most. He's got 4 goals in 8 games, and he was a truck. He was a freight train last night. He was moving all around. No one could stop him. And Travis Zajac, he's got that veteran experience. And I remember one of my guys who, one of the writers, came out with a blog and said, in the playoffs, that experience is going to help. And, he kills penalties. He takes face off. He does all the little things that can help you in a playoff series. And what he did, he was awesome in Game 6 against Pittsburgh. I thought he was fantastic last night. And that line, it's just an added bonus to what the Islanders have been trying to build for the past few years in terms of a 4-line run every single line down your throat type of team. And I think they've all been great, and I hope they can keep up for the series. Look, Pajot, he was a monster against the Bruins this year, and it's continued into the playoffs. So I expect another huge game from him on Thursday.
Rob, for those who don't maybe follow hockey that closely, explain the significance of the Toronto Maple Leafs blowing a 3-1 series lead and losing Game 7 at home to the Montreal Canadiens.
It's historic. I mean, the Leafs, I tweeted it right after the game last night. I said they were handed the easiest division to get to the second round, and they couldn't get to the second round. And it's just, I don't know if it's something in the water up there in Toronto. I don't know if it's the way they're built, because they brought in Joe Thornton. They brought in Wayne Simmons. They brought in all these guys who maybe had playoff mettle, and they failed. They simply put, they failed. And I always thought watching them this year, even when they had their goaltending problems, I'm like, this team is overrated. I've never liked their defense. I think that their bottom 6 is not as good as people say it is. And I just think they're just not a great team overall. They get they get the reputation because they have the Matthews and the Marners and the William Nylanders. That's not enough. Matthews had 1 goal in 7 games. Mitch Marner had 0 goals in 7 games. That's embarrassing. And to lose to a Montreal Canadiens squad who you're 10 times better than, and then to lose 3 straight lose 3 straight in a row to lose the series, and to really not even put up a dud in Game 7 in front of fans, even though it was healthcare workers for the first time. I mean, I wouldn't want to be anywhere in that front office or on that team right now, because they are going to hear it they've been hearing it for 18 years, but they are going to hear it way worse now, because this was supposedly their year. I remember Paul Bissonnette on Spit and Chicklets. He had them going to the Cup. A lot of people had them winning the Cup. You know what? If history just repeated itself, and the Leafs they shit the bed.
He's Rob Taub of Isles Blog. Obviously, Rob, we appreciate you coming on this morning. Thanks so much for coming on the show, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me, Jake.
Rob Taub with us there, co-editor-in-chief for Isles Blog at @rtaub_. Rob, a little curse there. We had to dump that on terrestrial radio. I'm like, Ron, dump it real quick. But good stuff there from Rob talking about the Islanders. And then, of course, another collapse for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We'll take a quick break, wrap up hour 1 of 2. Jake Asman with you here on a Tuesday on the Sports Map Radio Network.
Let's go. Pushing the odds with Matt Perrault.